Good day. Welcome to the second episode of the Dropout. The first episode of the Dropout with Vedant Lamba got a lot of love from you, got a lot of viewership. In 8 plus days, it is hitting 100,000 views. I'm sure the right lessons from Vedant Lamba's journey on the Dropout will inspire a young generation to be able to build ventures, to be able to make impact. Uh, Today, I have a very interesting guest on the second edition of the Dropout. I met him serendipitously some months back at a friend's home. I'd gone to meet the friend to introduce him to another investee company of mine, and there I met this gentleman who is perfect for the second session of the Dropout. Let me introduce our guest today on the Dropout. His name is Krish Anurag. He is based out of Singapore, but he's mostly in the plane. He's traveling to build his ventures, to look at his portfolio companies, to live his dreams. So let us welcome Krish Anurag to the second issue of Dropout.
Thank you
Krish,
so much for
welcome.
having me.
Uh,
It's very cool. I always get very nervous at the start of podcasts.
it's okay. Even sometimes I do get nervous. But
But I think
Krish,
they're really fun.
yes, Krish, I jokingly say that I want my podcast to be so successful that people should drop out just to be on my podcast. I think you will make that happen. Will you make that happen?
I hope so. I hope so. A lot more companies to fund them. So,
Okay. So Krish has a very interesting journey. When he was 8, he said he started accompanying his mother and father, sitting in uh, their business meetings, learning about business, entrepreneurship, funding. And at the age of 14, he started investing in companies. He set up his first venture. And formally at 16, when he was in class 10, he dropped out. And for the last 3 plus years, uh, he's living an interesting life. So let me ask Krish, how did all this happen?
so I don't know what originally drew me to business. I found it super cool. I think there's some really interesting energies around business where when you're creating something and doing something, and you're doing good things, it just attracts people. So I used to harass my mom and dad. I used to sit behind their laptop and take notes and try and learn. And I had done that for about 5 6 years. At 12, I started going to a lot of these other companies. I used to ask them if I could hold their bag and follow them around. And I would ask them about the meetings afterwards. I used to harass them so much that half of them let me start attending meetings itself. But at 14, I took the plunge to start investing. So I started with angel investing. And I'd done a bunch of other stuff like stocks, cryptos, forex, which I did not do well in. But I found my niche in early stage companies. Long investments, deep building, when there's not much there, and that whole creation process and creation energy is something that I fell in love with and something that I had some natural ability to spot. So over the last 5 years, I've done 12 investments in early stage companies. Out of that, we're lucky enough to have say we burn zero capital and we've got a couple good exits, best of which being 13x in 13 months. And in an Ayurvedic e-commerce platform. And I mean, you start with all the basic ways. So you start looking up at stuff like YC, stuff like Thai, stuff like something called Angel Central in Singapore, where you can go to these events and start looking at companies. You start seeing other people ask questions to the founders, and you start to internalize what do investors think, what do they look for, right? I mean, in every meeting, you'll see a couple commonalities, right? You'll ask about terms, you'll ask about founder history, you'll ask about GTM, you'll ask about what is your USP, what is the white space, and as you start to do that, you start to kind of develop an understanding of what is the investor perspective, which eventually becomes what people call the investor gut, right? It becomes your investment intuition. And everyone develops that in their own way. Mine is much more people focused, which is why I excel at early stage. While there's a lot more people that are more data focused, more traction focused, who like to do a little bit more of the later stage. And that's kind of how the whole investing journey ended up starting. Now we do a lot of we have an incubator launching to kind of cultivate new investments. We have the VC firm, and that's kind of the thesis around the investing side of journey. But I think good investors are good investors, but great investors are entrepreneurs first because they understand something different about what it takes to build a company, especially if you want to be an operational investor, right? So I had started my first company when I was 15. I had done while I was still actively in school, and I don't think you should drop out until you have something tangible that you can kind of look at and say this is there. So for me, that was we had raised about $1 million, and one of my investors
So
told
Krish
me
raised $1 million when he was 15.
16, 16, 1 year
16.
later, right? So we had one of the investors come and tell us, hey, I'm gonna give you 500,000 out of this million, but you have to drop out of school. And I got lucky enough because one, my parents are really well understood in entrepreneurship, but also my brother dropped out 3 months before I did. So he's younger than me by a year.
So he is answering my question: how to convince your parents to drop out? Krish, how do you convince? You get your older brother to drop out first. But what if you don't have an older brother or sister? Then
So
what happens?
what I had done is I'd done two things, right? So because my brother dropped out for his career because he's an athlete and he moved to Italy, I was able to go to my dad and say, hey, he did it. I want to do it too, right? And he was like, no, you're in Singapore. You can study and do the business at the same time. And then I remember thinking, okay, what do I say, right? I ended up getting a term sheet, going back to him and saying, hey, I have a term sheet. There's a clause in the term sheet that says you must drop out of school. I have to drop out. I can't lose this opportunity, right? And I think what really sold it was we had a lot of infrastructure around us, which is something that doesn't exist too much today in India or in a lot of places in Asia. Whereas if you look at the US, you have stuff like the Thiel Fellowship. I think what needs to happen is not an individual thing. I think it needs to be an ecosystem shift for a country or an organization to build that infrastructure for young entrepreneurs to be able to have a place to drop out to, right? So with the Thiel Fellowship, you end up with that entire educational system focused on entrepreneurship. You come in with an idea, you get capital to build your idea, and you build with them. And that gives a lot of parents the comfort to say, okay, I know they're in somebody's hands, right? You can do this by actually getting advisors to your companies as well, right? So one of my investors actually had to speak to my dad for me and be like, hey, we should let him drop out. There's something here. We're willing to invest. But I think once you set up tangible things, you can actually come with a case. So I came with a slideshow presentation to my dad to say, hey, here's what we have. Here's what we've done. Here's why we have capital. Here's the value proposition. And here's why I should drop out. And he came back to me and funny enough and said, because you're in Singapore, you can't. So I told him I'm going to move to Bangalore tomorrow. I'm going to move my company to Bangalore and then I'll drop out and move there. They said, okay, we'll figure out something in Singapore. And we ended up doing that. And it's been a kind of fun journey since then. We've got that company ended up shutting down about a year later because Web3 gaming ended up completely tanking. And that was really fun. I remember when the day I had to shut it down and I realized I had to shut it down, I ended up staying in office till 11 p.m. because I didn't want to go home and tell my parents that it did work. But that sprouted into something beautiful. At 17, one of my investors said, why don't you come and work for me? So I said, okay. Packed my bags, left home for the first time, moved to Bangalore, joined for strategy and growth. And in 12 months, we took this company from 80,000 users to over 1 million. We raised from Tiger, BNX, SquarePeg. The founder is one of the most phenomenal people. And he almost took care of me for that year when I was there and taught me a lot of what I knew about building companies. And I think it's all about your infrastructure, right? If you can
It's about
convince the
your
right people,
support from people, the ecosystem.
you need good people around you that not only are willing to support you, but are also able to give you enough credibility to go to your parents and say, hey, I can drop out, not just because I want to do something, but because I have something around me that validates who I am and validates what I'm doing and validates why I should be doing this. Right. And I think that infrastructure is starting, right? There's now a couple organizations out of India. Thai is one of the great ones, right? Where they have a lot of access for a lot of investors, a lot of people, and Thai has been super helpful for me. My first podcast was on the Thai platform as well. So I think you need to find this infrastructure, find places like YC. A friend of mine, his son is 16, just got accepted to Y Combinator, getting flown to live in the US for 6 months, and dropped out of school to do that. So I think you got to look for the right infrastructure, look for the right people. I hope to one day build that for India, or at least that's the goal to do that next year.
And Krish, life is about trade-offs. If you're building ventures at a young age, you're not playing football or going to parties or whatever young people do, right? How do you kind of accept that trade-off?
I think anybody who drops out to build a company loves it at heart, right? And it's not a trade-off because it's your passion. And if it's not your passion, then it doesn't make sense to do it anyway because it's going to be really, really tough to succeed.
And it sounds very cool. Oh, I dropped out. But there's too much risk. You had to shut down one company. How do you deal with the fear of the unknown, so to say? You're in uncharted territory when you're in a school, college, you know the predictable path, right? So you took a, so to say, a road less traveled. How do other people do it? It's
So there's
tough. I won't recommend it to my children to drop out.
there's a good quote. It's like an old Greek philosophy quote. I don't remember who said it, but everybody is scared. Bravery is not being brave, but pretending to be brave is the same thing as being brave,
So
right?
doing it scared.
Doing it scared. I have been terrified. I'm still terrified half the time, right? I have no idea what will happen tomorrow. And even with the VC world, it's even more terrifying because I don't know what's going to happen with my portfolio.
By the way, investors are bigger dreamers than the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what I feel.
I think investors are able to see what entrepreneurs don't see on day one because entrepreneurs hyper fixate on what's now. And that's how they should be, right? At the end of the day, they have to build the company today before they can think about tomorrow. And the truth is, in the first 2 years, the company will change 80% most of the time. In the next 2 years, it'll change another 30%, right? The companies will end up looking nothing like they look like on day one. So, as an investor, your goal, especially as a VC, and as an early stage VC, you have to look at what is the 7 to 10 year potential of this company. And how do I eventually exit this? How do I get a certain amount of multiples on this? How am I able to sustain this? Can I build the next round for the company? Can they raise further capital? Do they want to expand? Is it potential? Is the market big enough? Is the problem big enough? And all of those things are majority big picture, except for the people where you look at, are they capable? And are they capable to do it in the long term as well? As a founder, I'm trying to raise my next round. I'm trying to build my product, right? I'm not trying to think about what this company can look like in 7 years. And I think as an investor, you have a different thesis of looking at a company than a founder. And it works that way because that's how it should be. The moment I have a founder that says, hey, I'm going to be thinking about what this company is going to do in 10 years, I'm not going to be focusing on today, you end up with an issue where these guys don't end up providing the right value proposition.
Understood, Krish. Since this podcast is about dropping out and being interesting, do you think you're interesting?
Yeah, I do.
And why?
I think I have an interesting story that can be inspiring to a lot of people. And so right now I support about 6 of my friends that have dropped out of school. I have a friend who dropped out to do an influencer thing. He's now making $1.5 million USD in profit a year, right? Of coaching influencer ecosystems. And he built the concept of branded dropshipping for Singapore. He's younger than me. He's 18, right? And I think I'm interesting because I have interesting people around me. I can become a consortium of interesting knowledge and things. Everything that I say, I believe, is something that I've learned from somebody else, and I'm just spreading and passing on that knowledge. And I think if you speak to a lot of interesting people and be around a lot of interesting people, you become interesting by proxy. You're being a consolidation of a lot of interesting people. And if you're young and you get that opportunity to meet a lot of interesting people, you provide a unique perspective of, hey, how does this look like for me when I have 40 years to build something instead of 10 years?
And Krish, what are the myths about young people that you'd like to bust on this show?
Hmm.
Are there any myths about young people?
Yes.
And what are those myths?
I think, and I think these myths are actually truths that have
Or
become,
stereotypes, let's
right?
say. Not
And
myths,
I think
but
these
stereotypes.
and myths are truths that have become myths because of the information economy today, right? Today, if you look at the world, I can actually go on and learn everything about a VC on ChatGPT, right? Before, the reason that young people weren't able to operate in capacities like this is because we didn't have access to information so readily and available as we have today, right? You get on social media when you are 10 years old now, right? You start consuming a ridiculous amount of content about an unbelievable amount of things. So your knowledge base that you have as a young entrepreneur and as a young person in general is so much larger now than what it was a couple years back, or even 3-4 years back now. Because now with ChatGPT, you don't even need to know how to research. You just type a basic question as if you were asking a friend. So I think the fact that young people have less knowledge is a myth. I think
So there's a myth and a stereotype that young people have less knowledge because they use AI tools. That's a myth.
So I think no, I think the myth was that young people have less knowledge.
Why? And why do they have less?
Because they had less access to knowledge before. Now that is a myth because of AI. AI has created that knowledge base. It has created that knowledge ecosystem for young people to develop knowledge very quickly. And as a founder, let's say I'm building X company. I only need to know about 4 or 5 things extremely well. which I can develop now at an accelerated pace comparative to anything before. So I can pick this up really, really quickly. The next thing I feel like is a myth is the naivety of young founders now. And I'm saying this as a myth for other founders because I am still relatively naive in the way that I operate. In a lot of elements that I have, I end up becoming over optimistic or over excited about companies when I invest, and that's why my investment team has been built to be pessimists to balance that out. But I think now what we're seeing is, in the same case of the amount of stories and consumption that we have, right? There is now a million podcasts available, right? We're doing one now talking about knowledge that you need to develop as a young entrepreneur. This did not exist 5 years ago. Experience can come through experiencing it or through translating experience, which is something that has become so adaptable and so available that you're able to add an experience to a youth perspective, where you have a differentiated perspective than most entrepreneurs. And if you look at places like, for example, take media business as an example, right? Bringing a young perspective into the media business that understands the end consumer in a different way provides such a strong value proposition as a company, because that brings a real interesting value proposition in USP where you could see something different being created. And at the end of the day, different companies are the ones that work most of the time, right? So that's something that we find pretty interesting there. And that's another myth that I think we can bust. Any other myths? I don't think so.
That they spend too much time on their phones,
electronics,
like gaming. Gaming is okay. You live only once, so they are very into now and not. They don't think long term.
I strongly disagree with that now because there's so much fear mongering that happens, right?
And stereotyping and generalizing,
Yeah,
which is absolutely not true.
now most people that I know that are over the age of 14 are already stressing about their university. They're stressing about their job after that. They're stressing about the money after that. Where will I live? What will I
And because
do?
it's too much comparison, too much social media, too much pressure, whether it's family pressure, whether it's social pressure, whether it's peer pressure.
But because of that, people who are young are now thinking very long term. But it's not for a good reason. They're thinking long term out of fear, right? And the problem is, if you don't, the world is so hyper competitive now that you end up becoming left behind, right? So it's happened by a balance of fear and a balance of necessity that people are starting to think a lot more further ahead.
And Krish, do you think you're successful? You said you're interesting.
No.
Why are you interesting?
I don't
What's
think I'm
interesting about you?
I think I'm interesting because I've been able to meet a lot of interesting people and I've been able to internalize a lot of what they said. And I'm able to relay that information out and hopefully.
And are you successful?
No, I don't think so.
And what will in your own definition make you successful? When will you think you're successful? Like you got this early success you talked about from your latest fund. You invested in a company where you're already 5x.
So I'll give you some context because we haven't actually spoken on what the fund is.
Right.
So I, after my time at the company that I'd worked at in Bangalore, I saw an opportunity in gaming in India and put together a VC for that. We aim to put $6 million together. We've ended up putting 10 million. We have another 5 to go and maybe put together some more entities on top of that. But it's investing in early game adjacent startups out of India and building that ecosystem out for the country. Japan is doing phenomenally. US is doing phenomenally. We see a lot of really, really intelligent founders out of India, and we want to build a VC that kind of not only provides capital early, but also builds ecosystem infrastructure. We have an incubator co-hosted by two multi-billion-dollar companies, being Nazara and Mixi. Nazara being out of India and Mixi being out of Japan, built on going even a step further than our VC and providing that pre-MVP to MVP completion for these phenomenal young teams based out of any corner in India who just want to build in gaming. It's about building accessibility, access, and ecosystem. And to go to your question about success, if you had asked me this question 2 years ago and I had saw myself now, I would think I was successful. I don't feel like I'm successful now. I have an idea of what success looks like for me in 2 years. And I can almost guarantee you in 2 years, I won't feel successful either. Because as an entrepreneur, you create two types of goals, right? You have your overarching large goals and you feel good when they happen. And you have your micro goals, right? I want to do this in 3 months. I want to close my fund in the next 4 months, right? I want to have TVPI in 5 years, right? I want to return capital in 5 years. I want to have a TVPI of 4x on my fund at least. And that metric of success will keep changing, right? If you look at any VC, how many of them want to raise the same amount of capital in their next fund as they do in their last fund? Because to them, that as you achieve your idea of what's possible increases. So your mental perception of success increases in the same way.
Sure. It's like if you're lifting weights, you're able to lift a certain quantum, you want to lift more because you feel you've already done so much. So,
But I
goals in
think
life are a bit
it's
like
very
that.
important that you stay appreciative, grateful, and humble of what's happened, right? If you lose sight of that, you end up becoming the quintessential unhappy entrepreneur, right?
Absolutely.
It never becomes enough. You end up
So,
ruining your
Krish, how do you
business.
relax? What do you ever relax? What do you do apart when you're not working?
I play a lot of piano and I do a lot of combat sports. So I'm a big fan of music. I have an AirPod in about 24/7, right? And I think music is something that is great. I think there's some beautiful energies and beautiful feelings around music that can make you.
Do you sing too?
I wish I could. I wish I could. I've tried to. I'm a very bad singer, but I like singing. But I've played piano for about 13 years now.
So, Krish, coming back to if somebody is thinking of dropping out, is there a thumb rule? Is there a playbook? Are there some advice that they have from you?
So
You'd already talked about, in your case, it was easy for you to convince your dad because your brother had dropped out. But
my advice is if you are not able to build some base level tangibility while you're still at school, don't do it.
okay,
Right? And you build your level one, you build your infrastructure, you build some validation, and then you drop out not just because you want to be an entrepreneur, you drop out because you have something to drop out for. And see, being a young entrepreneur, there's a good quote, which is you're going to get into the room 2 times more often because you're interesting, but you're going to close a deal 5 times less. You're
absolutely.
going to have to work 2.5 times harder than anybody else. So you have to then be able to say, okay, I need to be able to do it while I'm in school. I spend 8 hours in school and then I work 10 hours at home every day. And then I build my base and then I drop out because I have a reason to drop out now. And if that's not the case, the risk is high.
Yeah.
The risk is very high, right?
And Krish, do you have models apart from mom and dad? Who do you look up to and why?
So there's a couple people, right? One of my advisors and very, very close people to me, he's been like an uncle to me for a very, very long time. The guy called Ramakant Sharma. He's also
Live space.
He's also a
I once met him on a flight.
right? He's a very, very
Singapore
cool
to
guy,
Delhi.
and he's who I aspire to be as an investor. So he's written over 130 angel checks, and he told me something interesting when I started investing is there is no more angels in angel investing. There's only sharks. Be an angel, don't be a shark. And I think that is true. There is a lot of advantageous investors as of today. It's very difficult to find good capital now, right? Especially early, and especially if you're young. You won't get money from anybody other than good capital because your first check will mostly be people supporting you, right?
So Ramakant is one.
Ramakant is one. Sadik is another one. He was the founder of the company that I had worked at, and he is brilliant. He is unbelievable. He's done like 3 exits so far. Serial entrepreneur. He just finds something interesting and then he just goes and builds a company there, right? And he taught me a lot about how to think like an entrepreneur, how to act like an entrepreneur. One of the most hardworking people I've ever met. And he almost basically took me in for a year. So he's a role model for me. Within the Chimera ecosystem, there's people like Kostab, who is my venture partner, who basically helped me navigate the scene when I first came in. And we met because he pitched his company to me. And now he's a venture partner at Chimera. We work very, very closely together. Another one is Akash. We've been working together as a family metric for almost 30 years. And he is someone who from day one has always been there, advised, helped the back end, made sure I had my head on straight, learned what I needed to learn, and advised from there. And I think there's many, many such people like that. Nitish from Nazara and Harusan from Mixi being my 2 larger scale investors and kind of role models and people who believed in me very early. Nazara was actually our first check in the fund. And he is somebody who's taught me so much about this. And he started Nazara when he was 17 as well. And that's when I had first met him. So that kind of relationship that is there that was really, really special. And that support structure is something that I will always appreciate.
And if I talk to you in 1-2 years from now, what would have Krish achieved? Would you have failed at one or two more things? Or
I hope not.
okay. You made failing sound so sexy that I said maybe
I mean, you either win or you learn,
Sure.
right? There's only 2 outcomes that you have, and as long as you keep picking yourself up and continuing, then you'll always end up on the right path. And I hope to not fail with this. I feel like we've reached a critical point now with Chimera where we've got about $10 million in. We've done 9 deals. We're having assets that are performing really, really well. And I think that would probably be a really good place for me to say, okay, this is okay, right?
We're on the right track.
We're on the right track. I don't feel fear of failure now. It's just how high can we go, right?
And tell us, what should we expect from Krish in the near-term future?
Couple announcements. We are you're making me spill a lot of information here.
Yeah,
we have our incubator coming up. We'll be opening announcements of that on 8th November. So that'll be before this comes out. But we'll be doing a lot of widespread accessibility and opportunity for gaming founders. We're doing a first check of $500,000 for these founders. That on day one, we want to build with you. We want to support with you. If anybody's building anything in gaming, we'd be happy to reach out. We're launching a Japan cohort as well. Funnily enough, the Tokyo government just kind of ended up saying, hey, we're doing an incubator, grants as well. We like your model, and Mixi being a Japanese counterpart for us and working with us on the incubator, they just sent an application. Tokyo government just came and give us almost $400,000 to launch a cohort there. So we'll have a Japan cohort launching, early signs of doing either Vietnam or Indonesia as well. UAE is a massive market for us that we're looking at as well. Hopefully raise a follow-on fund or a fund too. Do something bigger, expand. And the most important thing for me is I want to build a deal fellowship-like concept for India, right? When I talk about that infrastructure earlier, I am so fortunate, and I would be nowhere near to where I am today if I did not have that infrastructure from my parents.
Sure.
So what I want to do is almost replicate that infrastructure
to enable other people.
And actually put capital with it. And that's kind of a goal or a vision of mine. Hopefully I'll be able to do this next year, but this will probably be the thing that most of you guys would be interested in looking at.
And Krish, how's it to work with you? People who work with you are a little older, a little younger. How are you as a co-worker or a boss or a founder?
My operations guy is here. Come say hi. I drive him insane.
Hi.
Was he in chat? Come a bit closer. So this is Yashmit, my operations guy. I drive him insane. But I think better question to ask you that.
How's he to work with? Is he tough? Is he not predictable? Is he all over the place? Is he too organized?
No, he is extremely unorganized for sure. I would say working with him is actually amazing because I say he has the silver tongue. When he speaks to anyone, even me, I'm kind of enamored. But like, how is he so clear and he knows what to say at this young age? I am extremely impressed. But handling him is a one-person task, and we've been talking about that for a while. So
we'll get you on a podcast to how to deal with the dropout.
Oh my God!
Deal with the dropout podcast.
So you got your next series already, right?
Yes, but it's been fun talking, and I can only say for the last 10, 15 years, I've been saying that the real way to learn new things is to have reverse mentoring. You have mentors who are younger. You learn things from them, and in some way, some things get reiterated that you already know. So it's good fun talking to you, Krish.
Pleasure.
And good to have you as a guest cameo on the podcast. So tell us if you like the Dropout with Krish Anurag. I'm sure we'll see a lot more of Krish Anurag. And we still have to do a rapid fire with him. So we'll need you there, and we'll need him back in this chair.
Of course.
Yes.
Part 2.
Yes, part 2.
If you're building in gaming, or if you're just a young entrepreneur, we'd love to support. On a personal capacity, separate from the fund, we love creating opportunities for young entrepreneurs, creating accessibility, creating ecosystem. My ecosystem will always be open. You can find me on LinkedIn, or my number's everywhere. You can reach out.
Good. Thank you.